see this. It's taped up here. She can be able to read it. Is everybody ready? Good morning. My name is Riley Ross, and I'm here with my partners Kevin Mincy and Thomas Fitzpatrick. And on behalf of our law firm, Mincy, Fitzpatrick, Ross, we are proud to stand here as attorneys for Ms. Rickia Young and her son. In the early morning hours of October 27, 2020, just hours after Philadelphia police shot and killed Walter Wallace Jr. in West Philadelphia, Rickia Young drove with her 2-year-old son to pick up her young nephew who was stuck in West Philly and afraid of the growing tensions between the police and those protesting Mr. Wallace's killing. After picking up the 16-year-old, Ms. Young began to head back home when she encountered a large group of protesters and police on a busy Chestnut Street. It appeared that the police had Chestnut Street blocked off at 52nd Street. Ms. Young saw cars in front of her begin to turn around on the one-way street. She attempted to execute a U-turn but had to stop to avoid hitting the protesters who had suddenly started running past her car. Suddenly and without warning, a pack of Philadelphia police officers wearing riot gear and wielding batons descended on the car, smashing multiple windows of the vehicle. The officers then violently yanked Ms. Young and her nephew from the vehicle and physically beat her and him in the street, causing significant injuries. Ms. Young's son was also pulled from the vehicle by the Philadelphia police officers and taken away from his mother. And by now, you've all seen the viral video of this horrific incident. Last year, shortly after being hired to represent Ms. Young and her son, we made it clear that it was our mission to ensure that all parties would be held responsible for what happened to Rickia and her son. We are happy to report that one chapter of this story has been closed. Ms. Young reached a favorable settlement with the City of Philadelphia for injuries that she and her son suffered and will continue to suffer because of the actions of the Philadelphia police officers. We've been told that it is the largest pre-lawsuit settlement for a non-fatal police brutality case. However, this does not end the story. Today, we are calling on District Attorney Larry Krasner to bring criminal charges against those officers and hold them personally accountable for their actions. Such actions would not be tolerated by everyday citizens, and they cannot be tolerated by those sworn to protect us. We are also here today to address additional injuries suffered by Ms. Young and her son. The last time we spoke to the press about Ms. Young's case, we told you how the National Fraternal Order of Police used the worst night in Ms. Young's life to peddle propaganda. The NFOP is the world's largest organization of sworn law enforcement officers, having more than 350,000 members and more than 2,000 lodges across the country. The NFOP saw Ms. Young's tragedy as an opportunity to reach their 350,000 members and their families by blatantly lying about what happened to Ms. Young's son that night. You see, there were a few photographers that were on the scene that night, and one of them snapped photos of Ms. Young's son being taken out of the vehicle in the arms of a female police officer. Some of those photos were posted online. A day or two later, the NFOP's legislative liaison posted the photo of Ms. Young's son being held by the female police officer on their social media platforms. Instead of explaining that the photo was taken seconds after the child was ripped out of his mother's vehicle and seconds after seeing his mother being beaten by police, the legislative liaison, with the NFOP's approval, posted a photo online with the following caption: "This child was lost during the violent riots in Philadelphia, wandering around barefoot in an area that was experiencing complete lawlessness. The only thing this Philadelphia police officer cared about in that moment was protecting this child. We are not your enemy. We are the thin blue line, and we are the only thing standing between order and anarchy." This post is a lie. This post was designed to manipulate all who read it into believing that this child's mother had no care or regard for her child, such that she would leave him wandering around barefoot, according to the lie, during violent riots in Philadelphia. This post also sought to make the reader conclude that the police were the only ones that cared about this little boy. Not his mother, not the community. The police were the only ones who wanted to protect this boy from harm, when in reality, the police were the ones who caused the harm. Ms. Young refuses to tolerate this propaganda. Ms. Young refuses to participate and perpetuate the police brutality by allowing this post to be the narrative of what happened to her son. Mincy Fitzpatrick Ross stands behind Ms. Young. We have filed a complaint against the NFOP for this blatant lie that has placed Ms. Young and her son in a false light and intentionally caused them emotional distress. In a minute, my partner Kevin Mincy will discuss the claims against the NFOP in more detail. But first, I want to give Ms. Young the opportunity to say a few words. Then after Kevin speaks, we will answer questions if you have them.
Good morning. I'm happy that we have been able to settle the first part of the case. I will never forget what those officers did to us that night. I hope that the officers responsible will never have the chance to do something like this to another person ever again. The lawsuit against NFOP is extremely important. I want them to be held accountable for what they did to us. For them to portray me as this type of mom who wouldn't know or care what her child was while chaos was happening, all around was very hurtful. All to promote a political message of fear of Black people and civil protesters. Our physical injuries may heal, but the pain of seeing those images of my son in the arms of an officer and that horrible caption written to describe that picture may never heal. They need to be held responsible.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Mincy. In this case, we are seeking two types of damages. First, compensatory damages for the invasion of privacy committed against Ms. Young and her son by the National Fraternal Order of Police, when they authorized their staff to post about her son, manipulating them both to be used as a piece of political propaganda and the emotional distress that conduct has caused. Second, punitive damages as a result of the NFOP failing to properly supervise their employees in charge of posting content to the NFOP's social media accounts. It is without question that the National Fraternal Order of Police took and continue to have a strong stance in opposition to protests against police brutality that have been occurring around the world for the last 18 months. In this case, they intentionally used the image of a scared child to frame a protest against a police shooting as a riot. This lie, created by the NFOP, is even more disgusting when you consider that it was the NFOP's rank and file members who caused the chaos that night and essentially kidnapped Ms. Young's son and created the conditions that they characterize as a riot. All of this was done 1 week before a contested national election in order to advance the political interests of the NFOP. Look no further than the website for the NFOP, and they themselves will tell you that the influence of their national legislative office on public safety and policing issues is, quote, second to none. This particular post that Riley referenced earlier was, of course, generated by that national legislative office. There is no question that the approval of a post like this was made with a specific intent. When you think about it, this social media post symbolizes what President Bush was speaking of just a couple of days ago during his September 11th remarks. This post was designed to stoke political anger, fear, and resentment, and was done at the expense of the well-being of a young child and his mother. We know for certain that in just under 40 minutes, This live was shared on Facebook alone 717 times. It would not shock me to find out that it was shared in similar or greater numbers on Twitter and Instagram. At many law firms, this case would have been over after securing such a historic settlement against the city of Philadelphia. Now that we have closed that first part of the case, we turn our attention to the promises that we made Rickia when we first met. We promised her at the outset that we would work to make sure that each participant and party involved in causing her harm will be held to account. We will not allow acts like those committed by the NFOP to be swept under the proverbial rug. This is abhorrent behavior by the NFOP that must be held accountable for. We are eager and prepared to prove our case to a Philadelphia jury. If you have any questions, we'll take them.
What about the police officers that were involved? Are you guys interested in going after them?
That was all part of, obviously those are employees of the city of Philadelphia. That was all considered in the negotiations that we had with the city in making this settlement.
Kevin, what are the terms of the settlement with the city, and did they make